Hey, Mindless Love here. I talk about day-to-day acute problems we all face in our lives on this channel. Today's topic is detachment and what it means. If you're going through something painful like a breakup, it is really important that you understand what it means. All right, let's be real for a second. Breakups suck. Not in a dramatic movie way, in that quiet gut punch kind of way. You can go out with your friends, hit the gym, binge watch something to distract yourself, and for a few hours, it actually works. You laugh, you feel fine, but then it's late, the phone's silent, and your brain starts doing that thing again. Rewinding. You start replaying every little moment. The first time you met, the inside jokes, the stupid arguments that now feel so pointless. You scroll through old pictures, even though you swore you wouldn't. And you don't even know if you miss them or if you just miss that feeling of being loved, being wanted, being someone's person. That's the part that hurts the most. It's not just losing them, it's losing the version of you that existed when they were in your life. You wake up and suddenly there's this emptiness. Like the world's still moving, but you're stuck watching from the outside. And everyone's advice is basically useless. Like, just move on. Time heals everything. Focus on yourself. Like, yeah, you know that. But what do you do with the ache that won't shut up? What do you do when your heart still cares even though your brain knows it's over? That's what I want to talk about today. Not the fake, I don't care anymore attitude, not pretending you're fine when you're clearly not. I want to talk about something deeper, something that actually helps you heal. Detachment.
Now, before you roll your eyes, I'm not talking about becoming cold, emotionless, or pretending they never mattered. That's not detachment. That's avoidance. What I'm talking about is learning how to let go without hardening your heart. How to stop being controlled by the memory of someone while still appreciating what they meant to you. Because here's the truth. Detachment isn't the end of love. It's the evolution of it. It's what happens when love matures. By the end of this video, I want you to see your breakup differently. Not as a failure, not as rejection, but as an invitation. An invitation to understand what real love actually feels like. Not the kind that depends on someone else to make you okay, but the kind that starts inside you and flows outward. So if you're sitting there with your heart still heavy, wondering why you can't just get over it, stay with me. This is the part where you start taking your power back, not by forgetting them, but by remembering yourself. Let's talk about what detachment actually means.
So let's start with this. When people say you need to detach, it sounds almost cruel, right? Like, oh, so I should just stop caring? That's not what detachment means. Detachment isn't about becoming cold or pretending you never cared. It's about learning to love in a way that doesn't destroy your peace. See, when we fall in love, we don't just fall for a person. We fall for the idea of what life feels like with them. We attach our happiness, our identity, sometimes even our sense of purpose to that connection. So when it's gone, it's not just heartbreak. It's like the ground disappears under you. That's why breakups feel so brutal. It's not just the person you lose, it's the story you built around them. And that's where attachment sneaks in. Attachment is that invisible thread that says, I need you to make me feel safe. I need you to validate that I'm enough. It's the fear that without them, you'll lose meaning. But here's the problem. When your peace depends on someone else's presence, you stop being free. You start adjusting who you are to keep them around. You start overthinking every little thing like, did I say the wrong thing? Are they losing interest? And slowly, love becomes anxiety. That's not love. That's survival mode disguised as romance. True detachment, on the other hand, is the opposite. It's not pushing people away, it's allowing them to be who they are,
even if that means they eventually leave. It's realizing that your emotions are yours to manage, not someone else's responsibility to fix. When you love with detachment, you can still care deeply, but you don't depend on that person for your peace. You can miss them without falling apart. You can wish them well without needing to be part of their story anymore. And here's what's crazy. When you get to that point, love actually becomes stronger because now it's not coming from fear, it's coming from clarity. You're no longer saying, I need you. You're saying, I choose you. And that difference changes everything. Most of us have never really learned that kind of love. The kind that doesn't cling, doesn't control, doesn't panic when change happens. That's what detachment teaches you. It teaches you how to stay soft without being fragile, how to care without losing yourself, how to love without conditions. So yeah, detachment isn't the end of love. It's the purification of it. It's what happens when love matures beyond fear. And once you start practicing that, your breakup stops feeling like a loss and starts feeling like the beginning of emotional freedom. Now that we've unpacked what detachment really is, let's talk about the difference between love with attachment and love with freedom.
All right, now let's break this down. Because on the surface, love with attachment and love with freedom can look the same. Both people care, both people say, I love you, both might even be willing to sacrifice for each other. But the energy behind it is completely different. Let's start with love that's rooted in attachment. This kind of love says, I love you because you make me happy. It sounds sweet, but hidden in that sentence is a trap. Because what happens when they stop making you happy? What happens when they pull away, have a bad day, or simply change? Suddenly, the whole foundation of your peace starts shaking. That's because attachment-based love is transactional. It's built on need. I'll give you love, but in return, I need reassurance. I need attention. I need you to show up the way I want. It's so subtle, you don't even realize you're doing it. That doesn't mean you have a hidden agenda or you're a bad person for wanting reciprocation. It's how we're wired to think. There's always a subconscious outcome outside of our awareness that we secretly desire. Let me reiterate, you're not a bad person for having these expectations. It only becomes a problem when you are not aware of it. The lie that you tell yourself subconsciously is the cause of all the suffering. I like to use this Buddhist teaching as an analogy that may sound too philosophical if you don't understand yourself deeply, but it's true. Love with attachment is like holding a handful of sand too tightly. The harder you grip, the faster it slips away. You start controlling, overanalyzing, trying to predict their next move. You're no longer loving them, you're managing them. And here's the thing, when you love someone from a place of fear, fear of loss, fear of rejection, that love becomes heavy. Now, love with freedom, that's completely different. Love with freedom says, I love you because you exist. There's no condition attached. It's not, I love you because you make me happy, or I love you because you choose me. It's, I love you and I want you to be happy, even if that happiness eventually takes you somewhere else. That kind of love doesn't mean you're weak or passive. It means you understand that love is appreciation, not possession. You stop chasing certainty and instead you start trusting life. When you love from that space, something powerful happens. You stop trying to control the relationship and you start experiencing it. You can be fully present because you're not terrified of the outcome. You start seeing your partner not as a source of peace, but as someone you share peace with. That's the love that feels light, the kind where both people can breathe, where you can say, I want you here, but I don't need to trap you here. It's not that you don't care anymore, it's that you care in a way that doesn't destroy your inner balance. You love them with open hands, not clenched fists. And ironically, that's what makes people want to stay. See, attachment says, don't leave me, I need you. Freedom says, I want you here, but you're free. One comes from fear, the other comes from love. And when you understand that difference, every relationship in your life starts to change, not just romantic ones. You start to see that the most peaceful connections aren't built on possession, they're built on presence. So if your heart's been aching because you think you lost love, maybe what you really lost was attachment. And that's not something to grieve, that's something to grow from. Because once you taste love that's free, you'll never want to go back to the kind that's chained to fear. Now, let's move deeper. Let's talk about what healing through understanding actually looks like.
So now that we've talked about attachment and freedom, let's get into the part everyone really wants to know. How do you actually heal? How do you take all that pain, the sleepless nights, the overthinking, the what-ifs, and turn it into peace? Here's the thing most people don't realize. Healing isn't about getting over someone. It's about understanding what the experience was trying to teach you. When a relationship ends, the instinct is to rush. You want to feel okay again as fast as possible. You distract yourself, talk to someone new, bury yourself in work, anything to avoid that ache. But what you resist sticks. The more you run from your pain, the deeper it digs in. Real healing starts when you stop trying to escape it and start listening to it. Because that pain, it's information. It's showing you where you were attached. It's revealing what part of you believed that love was something you had to earn or deserve or chase. This doesn't mean the bravado of facing your fears is what you have to pretend to do. It doesn't mean meditating for half an hour daily and thinking about your pain, because let's be honest, it makes things even worse. You can't solve a problem created by thinking using your mind. It also doesn't mean you need to observe your thoughts and emotions. All of these things are a trap. It's the quiet understanding deep in your hearts of acknowledging what you're going through and how it's temporary like everything in life is. The understanding I'm talking about is something we naturally realize when it's the second time we're going through a breakup, because the first time made us wise enough to see through all that was temporary. It's that quiet understanding that can only be built through the wisdom of experience. You see, heartbreak has a strange way of forcing growth. It strips away the illusions, the fantasy, the dependency, the comfort of having someone else carry your emotional weight, and it puts you face to face with your own reflection. It's uncomfortable as hell, but it's honest. That's why detachment isn't about forgetting them, it's about remembering you. Remembering that you existed before them and you'll exist after them, that your value was never tied to whether they stayed or not. When you start to see things clearly, the healing process becomes less about moving on and more about moving inward. You start noticing your patterns, how you loved, what you expected, what you tolerated. You begin to see that maybe you weren't really in love with them, but with the version of yourself that felt alive around them. And that's okay, because that version of you, you can still access it. You don't need them to feel love again. You just need to rebuild that connection within yourself. Healing through understanding means you stop blaming. You stop blaming them for leaving. You stop blaming yourself for not being enough. Instead, you start accepting. It happened, it taught me something, it grew me. And that's how real peace starts to show up, not from forgetting, but from understanding. You stop begging for closure from someone else because you realize the closure was never in them, it was in the lesson. Now, let's talk about what that looks like in practice, acceptance and freedom, how to love someone even after they're gone without letting it control you anymore. All right, so we've talked about what detachment really is, how attachment-based love works, and how healing begins through understanding. Now comes the part that most people never fully reach, acceptance and freedom. Acceptance doesn't mean you suddenly stop caring. It doesn't mean you wake up one day and forget their face, their voice, or the memories. It simply means you stop fighting reality. You stop arguing with what's already happened. Because that's where most of our suffering comes from, resistance. We keep replaying the story, thinking somehow if we understand it perfectly, it'll change. If I had said this, if they had just tried harder, if things were different. But they're not. It ended. And fighting that truth over and over again is what keeps you stuck in the loop. Acceptance is when you finally stop asking, why me, and start saying, okay, this is where I am. What now? It's the shift from questioning the past to building from the present. You start to see that maybe this breakup wasn't something happening to you. Maybe it was something happening for you. Maybe it had to fall apart so you could finally stop building your peace on something fragile. Maybe this was life's way of saying, it's time to grow. And look, accepting doesn't mean you don't still love them. You might always love them. That's fine. That's human. But now that love doesn't have to hurt anymore. You can carry it differently, not as a wound, but as wisdom. Freedom begins the moment you realize you don't need closure to move forward. You don't need their apology. You don't need to understand every reason. You just need to trust that you're capable of building peace inside yourself again. And here's something powerful to remember. Love doesn't disappear just because the relationship ended. Energy doesn't vanish, it transforms. Maybe that love becomes gratitude. Maybe it becomes a lesson. Maybe it becomes the strength you use to help someone else one day. But it doesn't die. It just changes form. When you finally reach that understanding, you stop needing to close the book. You just stop rereading the same chapter. You realize that letting go isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing where to place your attention. You stop saying, I wish it had worked out, and start saying, I'm thankful it happened. You stop trying to erase the story, and you start embracing the fact that it shaped you. That's freedom. It's when love stops being a prison and becomes a teacher. When you can look back and genuinely wish them well, not because you're pretending to be over it, but because you actually mean it. Because you've learned that peace doesn't come from holding on, it comes from allowing. And once you reach that point, you'll realize something that's both terrifying and liberating. You never really lose anyone. You just evolve past the version of yourself that needed them. So yeah, maybe the chapter closed, but the story of you, that's still being written. And this time, you're writing it from a place of peace. So if you've made it this far, remember this. You're not healing to forget them. You're healing to remember yourself, to come home to who you were before the pain and to who you're becoming because of it. That's what real detachment is. Not numbness, not avoidance, but love purified. And that's what sets you free. Before we wrap this up, I want to talk about one last kind of freedom, the one most people never even realize they need, freedom from the mind. Because, let's be honest, most of the pain after a breakup isn't happening in the heart, it's happening in the mind. It's the endless replaying, the constant analysis, the what-ifs, the daydreams about closure that never comes. It's the mind trying to rewrite the past, fix what can't be fixed, or hold on to a version of love that only exists in memory. The mind doesn't like endings. It craves control, explanation, and certainty. So it keeps you stuck, trapped in loops of thought long after the person is left. And here's the truth. You can't find peace in the same place that created your suffering. Freedom from the mind doesn't mean you stop thinking. It means you stop believing every thought it throws at you. You start seeing those stories for what they are, echoes, not reality. You catch yourself when the mind says, you'll never find love again, and you answer, that's just a thought, not a prophecy. Once you understand that your mind isn't you, everything changes. You realize the pain is temporary. It's the story around it that keeps it alive. When you stop feeding that story, the pain starts to dissolve on its own. That's the final layer of detachment. Not just
letting go of the person, but letting go of the version of reality your mind built around them. When you do that, you stop being a prisoner of memory, and you start living in the present moment again. The only place where love, peace, and healing actually exist. That's real freedom. Not just freedom from them, freedom from your own thoughts about them. And once you find that, no breakup, no loss, no memory can ever truly control you again. You know, people think healing means you stop caring, but it's really the opposite. It's caring so much that you finally choose peace over chaos. It's realizing that love was never the problem, attachment was. And once you learn the difference, your entire world changes. Because love, real love, doesn't end when a relationship does. It stays. It matures. It finds new ways to express itself. Maybe that love turns into gratitude. Maybe it turns into art. Maybe it turns into the quiet strength that gets you through your next heartbreak with a little more grace. But it never goes to waste. Every connection, even the painful ones, adds something to you. They carve depth into your soul. They teach you patience. They show you how to hold space for yourself. So if you're still healing, if you're still replaying moments in your head, that's okay. Don't rush to erase the story. Let it fade naturally. Because one day, you'll wake up and realize it doesn't hurt the same way anymore. The memory's still there, but the weight is gone. That's when you know you didn't just move on. You grew. And maybe that's what love was trying to do all along. Not to complete you, but to reveal you. To show you the parts of yourself you'd forgotten. So take this time to rebuild, not by filling the space with noise or new people, but by rediscovering who you are when no one else is defining you. Because when you fall in love with that person, the one you are when you're alone, that's when you're finally free. If this video helped you, share it with someone who might need to hear it too. And if you're still in the middle of your healing, stay patient with yourself. You're not behind. You're just in the middle of becoming whole again. Thanks for watching. Take a deep breath, and remember, love didn't leave you. It's still here. It's just waiting for you to see it inside yourself.